Welcome back, wrestling fans, to On the Mat, the show that talks about everything that's going on in Garden State Wrestling. Mark Trible, joined by Brett Fetty. We're going to take a look at all the preview action for the playoffs that are coming up, the team playoffs that will go all through next week, and we'll give you everything you need to know right after this. Welcome back, wrestling fans. And Brett, it's playoff time. It's crunch time. The team tournaments begin next week. Are you ready?
Ready to break it down.
Me too, man. Let's start straight up. We're going to look at Group 1. We're going to go group by group in terms of the public schools and talk about who the favorites are in each sectional, then maybe take a glance towards what we believe the state semifinals will be. So let's start right off in North 1 in Group 1, Brett. And let's talk about the top seeds, Emerson Park Ridge. Clearly, the second seed, Pompton Lakes, but it looks like Emerson Park Ridge is the team to beat there.
Emerson Park Ridge, impressive wins over Hunter Central and St. Pete's this year, so they have to be the clear favorite. I would say the clear favorite to meet who we're going to talk about in South Group 1, which would be Paulsboro.
Yeah, absolutely. Emerson Park Ridge had a spectacular season. You talked about Stan, the man, Woods, the coach.
With the sweater.
Yeah, the sweaters, the winningest coach in New Jersey. You know, their record speaks for themselves, and certainly this season they've been great. Beat Phillipsburg this year, right?
Emerson Park Ridge?
Or Hunter Central?
Hunter Central did. Yes, Hunter Central did beat Phillipsburg. Beat them pretty decisively, too.
Yeah, Emerson Park Ridge has been spectacular. North 2, another usual candidate in terms of Roselle Park. Boundbrook, I saw them earlier this year. It's not the Boundbrook of past. They're the second seed. I would think Roselle Park kind of walked through this one.
Roselle Park, too, as well.
Yeah, they'll probably advance the top.
It's not your typical Boundbrook team, graduating 3 state champs. It's tough to replace them.
Yeah, Joe Casey's great, but the depth just isn't there, and sometimes that's the case with some of these Group 1 schools. Central Group 1, Point Pleasant Beach. Shore's the 2 seed. Point Pleasant Beach has been great all year,
Having a good year, having a good season. Yeah, I look for them to make it out of that group, and then get thrown in that bracket up at Toms River. But, having a good year, having a nice season.
The thing that's unfortunate about South Jersey Group 1, there are some very good teams. Pennsville, Woodstown, I think Buna's pretty solid. Collingswood's usually Group 2. They bumped down to Group 1. They're a solid team. But Paulsboro's there, and nobody in that section is going to be Paulsboro.
No, it's not. They're really not. It's going to be a nice rematch, Pennsville, Woodstown in the semifinals of that group. But you look for Paulsboro to pretty much walk away with that pretty decisively.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that odd criteria that Woodstown and Pennsville had a couple weeks ago. That actually handed Pennsville the 2 seed because they were actually behind Woodstown in power points, but because they had beaten them head-to-head, that bumps them up. So that would be wrestled at Pennsville if that were to happen on Wednesday night. All these matches, the first round will begin next Monday. Second round will be Wednesday night. Third round, which will be the sectional finals, will be Friday night. State semifinals, state finals, will be at what's formerly now Pine Belt Arena in Toms River. Those will run throughout the day on Sunday. So in terms of Group 1, Brett, the way the matchups would shake out, because the seeding in terms of the semifinals is always set based on power points. Right now, Emerson Park Ridge would be the 1 if the seed's held.
Yes.
They would wrestle Point Pleasant Beach, who would be the 4. Paulsboro would be the 2, and they would wrestle Roselle Park, the 3. It seemed like for the past month here, we knew it was going to be Paulsboro and Emerson Park Ridge.
It will be. And even looking into that match, which you have 2 undefeated teams going at it in Group 1, which is pretty impressive because, like you said, Emerson Park Ridge beat 100 Central. So even looking at the matchups, the preliminary matchups, I see Paulsboro still pretty much has I'm saying by 20, maybe just because Paulsboro's just strong top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And, with pinpoints and bonus, I just think they're too much for Emerson Park Ridge, which isn't to take anything away from them. That Paulsboro's just, maybe the number 1 public school in the state.
Yeah, and you kind of went through the lineups a little bit. Yeah, how did you see it shaking out? What would be the key weights? If Emerson Park Ridge were to even hang with them, where would they have to win?
I think if you get 113, which would be Mazzio versus Mazzio, that's going to be a tough match. It could go either way. And at 160, where you have Honorado versus Hughes, Honorado from Paulsboro, Hughes versus from Emerson, that could go either way. And another swing match could be a heavyweight, which Paulsboro has. They're okay. Mooney's okay. Does
solid, yeah.
Decent job. And they have a kid, Mark. So let's see how that shakes out. Because right now, if you're just looking at comparative scores, because a lot of times, like I'll tell you what, I saw Paulsboro wrestle this year. Have not seen Emerson Park Bridge wrestle, but I look at comparative scores, and sometimes you can tell, how it's going to figure out. But like I said, this is just us speculating on what could happen.
Yeah, certainly. Paulsboro's so strong from 13 to 95.
Yeah, I mean, but you're talking about Williams is a freshman who's tough, who's going to have another Mazzio, which, I mean, I would give Mazzio the edge there slightly, but then from 45 on to 82, Paulsboro could win every one of his weight classes. I mean, you have the younger Honorado, you have Worthy, they're both state qualifiers, and then the older Honorado, but then you have Green and Marina also state qualifiers, Marina state place winner. And like you said, that's tough for any team in the whole state to beat.
Yeah, Marina wrestled tough with Billy Janzer, was state champion at 70 last year from Delsey. He's wrestled him tight twice this year, so that's another kid that, even after the team stuff, is a guy we could be looking at the podium pretty high up on it in Atlantic City.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at Group 2 quickly here, Brett. Top seed in North 1 is a team that a lot of people have circled, have had them circled all season. You're looking at High Point. The second seed there is Newton. Newton a little bit behind High Point. I think we were higher on them earlier in the season. I saw them lose to Kingsway at the Jack Welch Duels in Morristown a couple weeks ago. So I would have to go ahead and say High Point is the favorite in that one.
Definitely. High Point's no, they're no newcomer to the state tournament as well. They're back, and they have one loss this year, and they've beaten Southern this year too. So I look for them to definitely make it through there.
Yeah, then when we go on, take a look at the North 2 in Group 2. Hanover Park, another good team. They wrestled Paulsboro earlier this year. Obviously, Nick Ramos is one of the best around. The second seed there is Caldwell. I would expect Hanover Park pushes through.
Yeah, I would expect Hanover too. Hanover's been there the last few years too, so they're no stranger to Toms River as well.
Second seed in Central Group 2 is Homedale, but I don't see them beating Raritan, who's the top seed.
I'm not sure Homedale. I'm not really sure what they would do, but I do know Raritan, and they're tough. They have there's already some common opponents there, but I look for Raritan to make it through.
And then in South Jersey, it's very odd this year in South Jersey in Group 2. I think at the beginning of the year, many of us expected Haddonfield would probably be the team. Collingswood made it last year, edged out Haddonfield. Haddonfield brought back a lot. I think when you look at it this year, they're now the 2 seed. Point Pleasant Borough is the top seed. That's a long ride from Haddonfield, but those two teams clearly seem to be the cream of the crop there.
And yeah, even Haddonfield is having a pretty good year. They only have one loss in state, which is Paulsboro. But Point Pleasant Borough was undefeated until they lost to Southern. So it should be a good match in the finals, Point Borough and Haddonfield, if it goes the way the seeds go.
Yeah.
But I would look for, right there, I would give Haddonfield a slight edge.
I was really impressed with Haddonfield last week. I saw them beat Gateway by 28 points. It wasn't that they beat them that way, Brett, but they had 3 times they had a kid in line to get a decision win. And in the last 45 seconds, they pinned their opponent. So those are those late extra 3 points. I think they wrestle, they wrestle through the match. Everybody always talks about the full 6. They wrestled a full 6. I think that helps them out.
And if you look, bonus points decide the matches.
Absolutely.
A lot of times when you're going, and we're going through, and we're doing matchups, we're doing predictions. It's tough to predict bonus points, but teams that have been there and teams that are hungry, there's the ones that win. And the teams that we've mentioned, they all have wrestlers at bonus.
Yeah, and as much as it's about bonus, it's also about saving the bonus points. The guys who stay off the back. I mean, that's always been the long thing we've talked about for years with teams like Paulsboro that we're around. They don't get pinned, and they don't get pinned when it matters, and that's the difference.
And that's where the good teams, that sets them apart, because anyone can coach those really great wrestlers, those top-level wrestlers, but it's getting the ones you got to sprinkle in to fill in, to stay off their back, don't give up bonus, and to sometimes pull a match out. And sometimes you see that, and we saw years ago in a freshman, Mellis, he pinned kid from Southern, was a returning district champ, and that was something that Peaburg's just a they grind out matches and they just wear you down, and that's what happened there. So maybe we'll see that again.
Yeah, we're going to get to Peaburg in a minute, but let's take a look here at what it would look like if the seeds pushed through and held true for Group 2. We got Raritan would be the 1 seed. They would likely wrestle Hanover Park, the 4 seed. High Point or Newton would wrestle Point Pleasant or Haddonfield. But that semifinal, Raritan and Hanover Park, would be interesting because in the state poll, the New Jersey Wrestling Writers Association poll, Brett, Raritan's 16. They would be the 1 seed. Hanover Park's ranked number 9. They would be the 4 seed. Hanover Park could win the thing.
And that's about power points. A lot of times power points are because if you're wrestling bigger schools with bigger enrollment, doesn't mean necessarily mean they're better wrestling schools.
Right.
They just carry more power points. And, we're talking about polls, too. Sometimes teams are ranked in polls, and it's just for argument's sake a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you what, I've been behind closed doors in those polls. Some of those people who are voting, I don't know if they've ever seen half the teams that are in there, but they're looking at comparative scores, and, they may rank a team higher and pull a team down. But, polls are just for probably argument's sake, entertainment value. And really, the only time a poll really matters is when they award that, I think it's the Ralph T. Pug Williams Trophy for number 1 team in the state. That's the only time, and you'll see coaches and you'll see jockeying going on there behind closed doors. Like I said, it's really not, sometimes it's not the most valid, but a lot of times the best team does win, best team separates itself. And, a lot of people have a problem with the parochial schools being involved with the public schools when they give out that trophy. But it is what it is right now, and that's what we're going by. But as far as polls, we talk about polls, it's pretty much entertainment value. It's for us to argue. It's for you guys to write in and complain to us and say, oh, my team should be ranked higher than this. And, hey, they might. Maybe they should have. But the best thing to do, the best way to settle it is you settle it on the mat.
And that's what happens most of the time, Brett. Quickly, Hanover Park, Raritan, High Point. Who do you like in that game?
I like that it matches up. High Point and Hanover won't meet to the finals.
Yeah.
You know what? I like Hanover. I do like Hanover
Park. I kind of do too, yeah.
I think they're, they have tough team, solid lineup, but, High Point has a big win over Southern, but I think Hanover Park takes it.
Yeah, Hanover Park and High Point might be one of the best state finals we get in Publix, if that ends up being the case.
Do you remember back 2 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, when High Point was, it was, they were down by a ton, and boom, boom, boom. I think they pinned the last 4 weights, which was like crazy, improbable, and they came back and they won a state title over Hanover. But Hanover did get their state title last year.
Yeah, Hanover Park had a great season, continues to build on that legacy that they're building there. When we get back, we're going to talk about Group 3 and Group 4 in the Publix in New Jersey. And then later on, we'll talk about Group 5, and then we'll touch also on the non-public. So stay tuned with On the Mat. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Tommy Green, former pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies. When I was in high school, it was very important to me to show scouts what I could do. My friends at Payroll Service Solutions are huge supporters of high school sports and the Sports Fan Base Network. If you're a small to medium-sized business in need of a payroll company, contact Payroll Service Solutions. Not only will they take care of you, they will continue to support the community. For more information, contact Payroll Service Solutions at 215-624-0922 or 866-PAY-EASY.
Let's take a hop back, Brad, before we get into Group 3 and talk about Raritan. They had an interesting result this weekend, something that kind of caught your eye. And we talked about this with the Pennsville-Woodstown match a couple weeks ago in Criteria H, which is most first points won. What did you notice about Raritan's result last week?
Well, I noticed that they forfeited the last weight because their coaches were doing their job and figuring out criteria, because that's one thing. If you need a good assistant coach who's pretty good at strategy, and they need to look out how a match is going to play out as you're going. So their coach figured out, hey, if we forfeit here, what that does is give team 6, we're tied in the score, and then they move down to all the criteria. But guess what? When you forfeit, you don't surrender near falls, you don't surrender first points, you don't surrender any points. So guess what? It keeps that clean for you. Now, is it questionable? It is if you want to see wrestling, but those are the rules. Remember we talked about earlier in the season, like this is the way the sport's set up. So, you have 14 weight classes, so there's one weight class, and you want to see them wrestle. But hey, guess what? It was a smart move by the coach, and they won. So they beat Middletown North by criteria, and it was first point scored. But when you forfeit, you don't allow first points.
That's right.
That's why a lot of times, you can't fault a coach for forfeiting, because that's the way the rules are made. And sometimes, hey, you don't like it, but it's a rule, and they're following, and they're on the direction of those rules. So you want to win, that's what you got to do, and they did that to win. So it's a smart move by the coach of Raritan.
Yeah, a little ingenuity there, got the job done, of course, for Raritan. Group 3, now let's talk about it. North 1, top seed Sparta, second seed's Pascack Valley. It looks like it could be a toss-up for that.
And you know what? In the whole Group 3, which we'll talk about, I think this is kind of suffering from when you do 5 groups, because it's down, and typically you would get 4 solid groups when you had Group 4s. So they had this Group 5, and now it's kind of breaking apart. And I know it's great you have more champs, but is it, would you rather see better, more competition and less state champs? Obviously, I just think it's watering down the pool, and I think Group 3 is suffering from this.
Yeah, I agree, but the other thing is that last year, I believe, was the first time they expanded the brackets to 8 teams. The result was, maybe it was 2 years ago, teams just getting obliterated in that first round by the first, second seeds. You want to include people, but I'll be honest with you, Brett, I don't think wrestling is a sport where inclusion is necessarily inclusion. I mean, you want to get on a bus and ride halfway across the state to lose, 81-0? Is that the playoffs?
No,
Does that count?
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing, too. It's a good sport. New Jersey puts out good wrestlers and good teams. But when you do this and you're putting all these teams into the playoffs, a lot of times it's like, what's the regular season for? And now with 5 groups, you're taking away some matchups that you've never seen. I talked about how in 100 Central and Southern really never win the state titles. But now, it breaks apart. And, hey, they're winning state titles and they're in the mix. Back then, it was... You had your perennials that were you had to beat them. Now it's kind of it's making it easier.
Yeah, let's talk about Group 3 here. South Plainfield, Cranford is the top seed in North 2. South Plainfield's the top seed in Central. Delsey's the top seed in South. It seems like South Plainfield and Delsey, if they both were to get there, would wrestle in the state championship. They're obviously familiar with each other. Quick point on Delsey, Brett. We had a question from Ronnie Victor who wanted to ask about when Delsey forfeited 6 bouts last week against Paulsboro. I think there were some fans that showed up, maybe thought they'd see a couple more weight classes filled out. What do you think?
I know they split in bouts 4-4, and hey, that's coach's decision why he wanted to forfeit to Paulsboro. And I guess he had his reasons, and can't question that. Yeah. You don't know, I know that in the past, maybe things were brought up about maybe a couple years ago, and Delsey didn't think it was snowing hard enough to wrestle because other teams wrestled that day. And maybe, I don't know if it's, that bitterness or it is what it is. And Paulsboro Delsey, hey, you know what? Makes for good rivalry.
Yeah, stuff like that always kind of stirs the pot. Yeah. Then we look down the line and it always is, nobody ever forgets. So that's great. Talk about Delsey. This is a team that, against St. Peter's on Saturday, they lost, and St. Augustine beat St. Peter's, and then they end up wrestling in a quad. And Delsey, it really looked like St. Augustine positioned themselves for a nice weekend. If they could go 3-0, beating St. Peter's and beating Delsey, they hadn't beaten them in 3 years, and Delsey ended up beating them.
Yeah, the mystery that is St. Augustine. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get down there, and from St. Augustine. They have some pretty good wrestlers. They do well, but sometimes they got to put it together in the team bouts. You don't know what's going to happen sometimes. And hey, Delsey capitalized. Delsey won. So give Delsey a lot of credit. Big pin at 106 by 2 freshmen wrestled, Walton and Defoni, and Walton pinned them. That was a big pin there. And even St. Augustine has a really good wrestler at 182 as a freshman, which I'm surprised they didn't bump the line up because I know Delsey's not too great at 220 and 285, but hey, maybe the coach had a different, he's in the practice room, the coach of St. Augustine, he sees his wrestlers more than I do.
Sure.
So maybe he had something else. But I just, when you're looking at maximizing points, that was something, that was left me kind of like, wondering why. But
And, in terms of looking forward to the individual stuff, you talk about regions or maybe even states, a big result there is Sean Lynch beats Tommy Maxwell,
and they wrestled for the 10th time, and it's back and forth. But maybe we could have held that match off until the regions again, and you could have moved Lynch up.
Well, now Lynch has the criteria, so he will be the top seed in Region 8. It seems like, right?
It'll be Lynch 1, Martin 2, and then Maxwell 3.
I think so. And okay, let's take a look here. That was Group 3 we just covered with Delsey. Group 4, West Morris is the top seed in North 1. Roxbury's the second seed. In North 2, Middletown North, is the top seed. Really, realistically, Brett, I would say Phillipsburg, who comes in as the second seed with power points, is the true top seed.
Yes.
Right? Even though they'd be on the road, you got to like their odds.
Yeah, they're good. I would say they're on a crash course of probably Long Branch in the finals,
Yeah, and
in the whole state finals.
you have an apology for the
Oh
state
yeah,
line.
I want to issue just a formal apology to the team in the town of Phillipsburg. I took a lot of heat for saying that they had some, really no names, because they don't. I know Cody Harrison's ranked at 138, and he had a big win over Barnett Southern, pretty much to seal the match for them. And Meyer, who's on a tear this year, he's ranked, I would say, top 2 for Peaburg. He's going to challenge for a state title. And then I know 120, who kid I like to watch is Travis Jones.
Yeah.
He's tough. He can pull moves out anywhere and put kids right on their back. And I know you're not no names. I just wanted to. I was saying it because you guys are tough kids, and I didn't want to give credit to just one kid. That's why I said that. But these are 3 kids that are probably going to, they probably have. They want to be on that podium, and we'll see what happens in Atlantic City. But I do want to apologize to the people of Peaburg, State Line, or Nation. I'm sorry.
I'm sure Phillipsburg folks will welcome you back with open arms, Brett, next time you're in the area across from Easton.
Yeah, when I go to the new crater, not the pit.
Not the pit.
They have the matches that's in the new crater. They said it's the pit was real close to the mats, and it was pretty nice. But now they say it's big craters, it's a big area to watch. But they say it's nice. They bring the cheerleaders, the band, they bring everyone in, and to fill the crater up to watch matches.
North Hunterdon's also in North too, but like we said, Phillipsburg, Middletown North.
They've already lost to Peaburg.
And Central Jersey, it looks like Long Branch. Jackson would be the 2. Brick Memorial's the 3. Jackson and Brick be a nice match up there in terms of the semifinals for the section.
Yeah, but right now it looks like Long Branch has an edge on them. But Jackson and Brick, no strangers to state competition. But this year they're just, I think, a notch below Long Branch.
Yeah, before the season, if you would have talked about South Jersey Group 4, it seemed like Highland was the team to beat. Then as the season kind of started off, it looked like Clearview. I think Highlands had a lot of uncertainty in that lineup with the coaching. Everything that's been going on at Highland, you're not really sure what to expect. You look at Clearview's, they lost Dave McCullough to an injury for the season. He was one of their best guys. So really the top seed now, and a team that hadn't lost until Friday, is Cherry Hill West. Looks like they'll represent South Jersey.
Cherry Hill West looks like they're going to be the team out of there. And you know what, though? Even that's not even a guarantee. Because I know Highland gets their coach back from the Pro Bowl this week. And I think they'll have Clearview, another rematch against Clearview. And then
in the semis,
we'll see what happens there. And then the winner to face Cherry Hill West. Cherry West is having a nice season. They just lost their first match to Paulsboro, but a lot of teams are losing to Paulsboro. So we'll see what happens coming out of there in Group 4, but I think this is another group that suffers from having 5 groups.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely, Brett. It is one that has kind of diminished things. I think if you look at Group 5 and you kind of imagine some of those smaller Group 4 schools bumping down to Group 3, you look at a team like Highland, and then also imagine what 4 would look like with some of those teams in there would be great.
Here's another issue, too, and I know there was a vote to keep teams in the same group, in the same section for 2 years. But you don't know how it bounces up. They're Central, they're South. Now they're going to place Hunter and Central, which sets that matchup. Now Hunter and Central's Central Jersey and Group 4, and because here's the problem: between North 1 and North 2, those teams are pretty much set in stone. But you don't know whether a team is Central or South, Group 4 or 5 sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be nice to get that set, but with numbers, I don't think the state. There's an issue when you can't have the group set, and they keep moving around and teams because you don't know the wrestling fans like, what are they, Central, they South? I don't you got to figure that out.
You got to juggle it at the beginning of every year.
And,
it seems
and what it does right now, you're knocking 100 in Central and how? Well, it's Group 5. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you're knocking You may knock the 2 best teams. They may be wrestling in finals of the sectional and not the state finals.
Let me put you on the spot with this. In Group 4, who do you think, Phillipsburg or Long Branch?
It's Phillipsburg.
Yeah?
Yes.
I would
Not
have to
because
agree with
I
you.
apologize to them. I just think they're a better team, and they beat Southern, and they're a tough team, and I don't know if they're going to be challenged that much either.
Yeah, Kingsway gave Long Branch a run for their money a couple weeks ago, and I saw that, and I would have to agree with you. I believe Phillipsburg probably is a better team. They've wrestled tough, and they've really bounced back since their loss a couple weeks ago. So it looks like Peaburg, again, is the team to beat in their group. Real quickly, before we go to the break, Kim McCormick Rodriguez checks in. She loves the heavyweights, and she asked, Delsey did awesome against St. Augustine. Delsey's heavyweight looked good. You know, the big men don't always get their credit.
No, they don't. And South Jersey,
coming up with a pin there was huge.
Yep, that's what happens. You get a wrestler pulling out a match like that, and the big men say, kudos to him. And we'll see how he does in the section and in the state, too, because I think Delsey's got a good chance to make it through.
They should push a lot through, especially after that team tournament.
They got a good coaching staff. That's a team, too. They're always prepared to get a good coaching staff.
Yep. Definitely. And they got a state champ in Bill Janzer, too, which always helps, right?
Yeah, they do. They're state champ.
We're going to come back and talk about Group 5 and touch on the non-publics, and stay tuned with On the Mat. And welcome back to On the Mat, presented by the Mat Pack and the Sports Fan Base Network. Brett, Group 5, in terms of public school wrestling, it is far and away the most intriguing.
It is now. It is now. And like I said, it could be more intriguing if the sections would have broke out a little differently, but they don't. And we'll talk about it if you want to go through.
Yeah, let's go through it.
Section.
First, let's talk about North 1. North Bergen is the top seed. West Orange is the second seed. And in North 2, Watchung Hills, the Warriors have had a great season. They're the top seed. Piscataway would come in as the 2. Let's wait for Central. Let's talk about South Jersey first, because Central's the one everybody wants to know about, and that's the one we want to spend some time on. South Jersey, Southern, who just lost to Peaburg, is the top seed. Kingsway is the second seed.
Yeah, and I saw Kingsway wrestle this weekend. They wrestled Hunter Central, and Hunter Central really took it to them. And then Kingsway had some kids out of lineup, but there's some matchups that, to keep the match closer, I was surprised that didn't happen from Kingsway. And also, too, Kingsway was in a quad. And typically, if you're in a quad and you're home and you set the sequence, sometimes you don't want to set the sequence against the best team last.
Right.
Because, you wrestle 2 matches, you don't know what's going to happen in those 2 matches, and then you're wrestling the best team, and sometimes you're going to come out, and these kids are just flat. They just don't have it. Typically, what happens is you wrestle team first, and the best team wrestles another team, because you want to be able to scout that team, and then you wrestle them second. But I was a little surprised to see that they wrestled them last. So it was a long day, and Kingsway had a rough time against Hunter Central. And I know they have some kids out of the lineup. 1 or 6 pounder isn't in the lineup, and I don't think it's because of weight. And I know Wexler was out of the lineup. Not that it would have made a big difference, but they're going to need them next weekend.
Yeah, and Southern's a team that Kingsway had circled from the beginning of the season. They figured it would be them and Kingsway in the final. That's the team they wanted to wrestle. I know last year Southern dropped out of Kingsway's tournament kind of at the last second, so they wanted to get a shot at Southern, and they could if everything holds true. The 3rd seed in that group is Toms River North. They're going to wrestle a Cherokee team that lost to Kingsway a couple weeks ago by a point. If Cherokee were to get by Toms River North, they would get Kingsway again. We'll see how the matchups would shake out in that match.
Yeah, that's another match that could go back and forth.
Yeah, they beat them earlier in the year.
Yeah, and there was some overturn matches, some kids avenged losses. But hey, Cherokee, they're right in that match with Kingsway. And I'll tell you what, Williamstown wrestles Kingsway tomorrow. That'll tell you a lot more about Kingsway, because they're coming off a tough loss, but they pretty much they took it to them. And right now, if I were to say Southern wins that group.
Yeah, Williamstown's a team too, Brett, that I saw them earlier in the year. They've had injuries the last couple of years. They're putting it together now. They have a lot of seniors. Shimon Smith, Nick DeRosa, Brian Martin, kids who are experienced, kids who've been waiting for this opportunity. It wasn't that the talent wasn't there. They just all hadn't really been healthy for circumstances or anything like that. They're going to get a shot at Kingsway Wednesday night for the Tri-County Royal Division Championship, and then they could end up
in the conference and the division. Very good.
And then maybe they're going to host Rancocas Valley the first round of the playoffs, it looks like. Williamstown, tough team. Obviously, Southern would be a tall task, but Southern and Kingsway, and you believe Southern probably push through.
After what I saw this weekend, I do believe Southern would hold the edge there, definitely.
Now let's talk about Central Jersey Group 5. This is the one that is, it's got the best group championship for my money. It seems like the top seed, Hunterdon and Central, would host Howe. Last year, they wrestled in the state championship when Howe was in South Jersey, and they kind of walked their way into the finals. Now, it was 28-27. Jesse Lipson, 13-5 major at 106 pounds in the second-to-last bout. Clinched it, really, because Hunterdon Central got a decision. So what do you think?
And the two 20-pounders, which are both gone, Lacombe and Keoshan, they went back and forth. They played ping pong in their matches. And then that's what Keoshan, who was state champ, he won the match, the ladder. But do you see a problem there that they're meeting now in the sections?
Yeah.
So we had a match in state finals that came down to the last match. It was really one of the only compelling state finals.
And it was entertaining.
Now it's in the central section. So I see there's an issue with that. And the state's got to do something about it. The state really needs to come together and say, what can we do for the sport of wrestling? I don't know what they're going to decide, but they really need to do something to get this sport where the best kids meet the best teams in the right time. And like I said, it's tough because they're going to meet in a sections and finals, and it should be a state final because both these teams, I would say, would make the state final.
Yeah, and Howe and Hunterdon Central, they only have one loss between them. Howe is currently ranked number 3 in the NJWWA poll. That's the number one public school team. I would have to say Howe is probably the favorite, but either way, Brett, I think you're right that Central Jersey Group 5 matchup in the championship.
Yeah.
That would be Friday night at 7 p.m. at Hunterdon Central. That would be the match that really, I guess you'd call it a de facto state championship. That would be the match to see. Which, you talk about it would be better to see it in the state final. It certainly would be.
A better
atmosphere. But for me, to see it in a Friday night gym, and I won't be there, but if, that would be a pretty crazy environment.
Yeah, that would be. And like I said, Hunterdon Central's only lost to Emerson Park Ridge, Group 1 school. So, you don't know what's going to happen. I would say I think Hal's a favorite, but we talked about there's conference tournaments that happened last weekend, and Hal lost to St. John Vianney. It's not a dual tournament; it's an individual tournament. It's kind of like how they hold the districts. But it's going to be a good match. It will be a good match. But I do want to say one thing: Southern, I give them a lot of credit. They dropped out of the Shore Conference tournament to go to Peaburg on a Saturday night and wrestle a match. A duel
at the Crater.
Yep, in the Crater. And I give them a lot of credit for doing that because they could have said, hey, we have the Shore Conference tournament. But guess what? True to wrestling, and John Stout said, I'm going to bring my team to a dual meet and have a nice Saturday night dual meets with people the crowd wants to see. And it's good for the sport. It's good for rivalries, too, because I know there's no love lost between Stout and Post.
And that's a long drive.
And they're two you see Dave Post, he's all dressed up in suit, sometimes 3-piece suit. And you see John Stout comes in, he goes button up in his jeans on.
That's right. It's obviously a big contrast between Southern and Phillipsburg, and a lot of miles between them. But Brett, when I first started covering wrestling a few years ago, I remember Clearview at Paulsboro when Clearview had that really loaded lineup. But that was a Saturday night dual meet.
Saturday night, yep.
And it's one of the things that endeared me to the sport. And I wish there were more of them. There really have been none in South Jersey that I recall being on the schedule where you circle it and say, I need to be there. It's going to be a great environment. Everybody wants to be there. And, I think the sport misses this.
I do. And they put the match limit up to 30. They shrunk the weeks before because now Atlantic City's not available the second weekend of March because they have I believe it's the Atlantic 10 basketball finals there. So they bumped out the... And
it used to be anyway.
State tournament, yeah. So something's got to be done. Maybe I can. We go down to states. I'll have a meeting. I'll pull Larry White aside.
Maybe we'll have Larry White on the show.
Yeah, maybe. He lives in my hometown, so they're knock on his door.
I have a question here from Ezra C. here. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Ezra. South Jersey Group 2. Your thoughts, Mark Trible? I think Haddonfield is going to win it. I think they're going to beat Point Pleasant Borough. But certainly that would be that's the matchup I expect to see. I know Haddonfield might get Cinnaminson in the second round, which could be a tight one also. But
Haddonfield's pretty solid.
I kind of prefer Haddonfield there. I think that they got some kids that are pretty tough. They got a couple kids down low I like. Chris Ballatino obviously is good. Luke Benedict's a tough wrestler. Sean Ellery impressed me the other night. And they have Will Murray up top is also usually good for some bonus. So I like Haddonfield there. Real quickly, Brett, the challenge of a kid weighing in 4 times in a week, because they got to weigh in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. If you get to states,
Yeah, it counts.
what's it like for kids?
It's
Is
tough.
it easier or harder? Because
Hard.
It's harder.
It's harder. It's harder. Anytime you have to keep your weight down, it's hard. But a lot of times now, they're starting to get in that groove where they know what they got to do to keep their weight down, but it's harder. Anytime you got to wrestle more matches and make weight, it's definitely harder. But sometimes make that weight is what makes or breaks a kid winning or losing. Because a lot of times you're not focusing on your wrestling, you're focusing on the scale. And a lot of times, I've been through it with a lot of kids. I mean, I've been through it when I was wrestling. You're just looking at that scale, like, oh, I can't not wait till I get on that off that scale and drink or eat something. And then on top of that, then you got to refocus into wrestling.
Yeah, I always wondered how it would be when you do it more in the week. If you stay closer to your goal weight, if it's easier to kind of hang around there rather than maybe once or twice.
You know what it is for the kids who are really good about their weight and they're in shape, and that's most of your top level kids. It may be easier, but I think anytime you got to make weight again, it makes it tougher. But I can say one thing: when you're down at individual like states and regions, you don't see many kids like struggling with their weight and running. They all, the top wrestlers have it down, because being all weight and being in shape, they go hand in hand, and you have to get control of that. Because if you're a crash diet and you're fluctuating, chances are you're not going to be in shape. You're not going to be in the best shape you can be, and you're probably not going to be able to place and get to that podium at states. Because states, you weigh in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, 3 days in a row. For everybody, we will be back not next week, but the week after that. And next week is the playoffs. Be sure to keep in tune what's going on. It's going to be Monday, it's going to be Wednesday, it's going to be Friday, and obviously the whole kit and caboodle at Toms River on Sunday, semifinals and the finals. In the meantime, if you want to listen to this show on podcast, you can certainly do that. Go to thesfbn.com. You find the links, find everything they're doing here at the Sports Fan Base Network. Watch Varsity Voice with Frankie Stokes Wednesdays at 7 o'clock. 3 in the Key with Richie Bleiweiss Monday at 7. And Thursday at 7, In the Paint with Nikki Jones.
And I do want to say one thing. I know a lot of people may say we're talking about the best teams. It's because we're doing teams, we're doing tournaments. But we're going to do it districts, regions, and states. So we're going to talk individual. So don't get discouraged. We're going to talk about all the best wrestlers when it comes in the districts, regions, and states. So there's viewers that say, hey, we talk about the top teams. After the teams go, it's all about individuals, and we will speak about the individuals.
Yeah, we're going to get to the best teams. We're going to get to the best districts, the best regions, the best
coaches,
weight classes.
The best coaches' attire.
Absolutely.
We'll have it all.
In the meantime, www.thesfbn.com. For Brett Fetty, Mark Trible of the Courier Post, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Good luck out there.
Goodbye.